That was supposed to be here, wasn't able to make it. I'm going to jump in and do a quick conversation on something that we've all talked about 7,000 million times to our workers, which is hazards and risks. Like, Kevin, what the hell are we going to do with hazards and risks? We're going to start off with a simple conversation, and here's how I start this. Hazards are not dangerous. And I'm going to prove it to you. Hazards are not dangerous, and I'm going to prove it. First off, we're going to start with turn this on. That is a safety manager, just so you know.
Oh no.
Jeez.
That was the safety manager.
Hey, you look thinner now.
I appreciate a little taller too, eh? My name's Kevin Brown, by the way. All right. Hazard, as we all know, is anything that can cause harm to a person or damage to a property. That is the definition of a hazard. So let me ask you a question. Is this thing a hazard? Yes. Yeah. Would you be surprised? You think so, right? Would you be surprised to know I found a dead body on top of that? That was plugged into the wall, laying in the snow. Working been dead on top of this for 2 hours. Had an inch and a half of snow on top of him. What happened to the worker?
He got electrocuted.
No, massive coronary heart attack.
Wow.
Died of natural causes. Right? But as an investigator at the time, I was a prevention investigator. Can I call natural causes at an accident scene? No way. Right? So we're now doing an accident. We got potential electrical shock. I got electrical engineers in. We're tracing circuits. We're having a good old time. And I have to sit there and wait for finally. We couldn't figure out what happened because nothing tripped. So I had to go to the hospital. And there's the family with the worker. And he's just laying there dead. To talk to the coroner. And I said, listen, there might be a potential electrical event. So then I have to wait for autopsy. And the autopsy come back. And the coroner basically said this. Nope. Many years of hard living, he said. This guy's arteries were like glass, and he passed away natural, but he landed on this extension cord.
Wow.
Interesting story.
Is that recorded?
Well, yeah, no. Well, it doesn't count as a fatality against the company. Sure, it's natural causes in the workplace, right? Believe it or not. Anyways, my question is, what is the hazards here? What kills you, voltage or amperage? Amps kill you, right? Not voltage, amps kill you. But look at the exposed wires and the duct tape MacGyver thing going on. It's funny when this is part of a course I do for supervisors. And I always come, how much is that extension cord worth?
$18.
Well, in Canada, that's $1 million fine. That's $1 million extension cord. The solution was $18. But this guy bought that cord to work that day, thinking, hey, I'm going to save some money. Right? Now, risk. Risk is very interesting because you go through all the safety dictionaries and you go through all the safety stuff. What does the word risk actually mean? So how do we interpret risk? What does it mean? Probabilities. Probability versus consequence, right? You can do time and duration on that thing. In fact, this is the only definition you find, even in the ISO world, of risk. What if I told you it's the wrong one? Because the word safety means freedom from hazards, but freedom from risk. And if you go get a dictionary, there's 13 definitions of the word risk. And we use only this one. But it's a misapplication of the word risk. It's not quite right. It is good for what we do, which is probability versus consequence and risk profiling, right? That's great. But in the freedom from risk, what does that word mean? So I got my dictionary out and I looked up all the 13. Well, then I got in there and I had to go in deeper. Okay, what's this word mean in the definition? And it was very interesting. I finally got to this little thought process. Risk. Well, let's come back for a second. Let's say this table here is a 20-story building. What is the hazard?
Gravity.
Well, gravity is going to be the hazard, right?
Yeah.
But what's the actual hazard?
A danger?
Sudden stop at the end.
There's no hazard there. It's potential. Nope, not even a potential. What's missing? There's nobody there. There's nobody there.
Isn't a source of danger or harm?
There could be a source, potentially, but there's a million holes in the plant. Nobody falls in the holes. You know why? Nobody there.
And it's still a hazard.
Could be. Still a hazard. Only becomes a hazard when I add a person, right? Harm to a person or damage to property.
It's great. I need a person for the hazard. You need a person for the risk, but you don't need a person to have.
So the hazard can sit there all day, but if I don't have anybody there, what's the hazard?
That's still a hazard. Doesn't mean that it's a risk. It's just somebody that comes close to it.
But when somebody comes in, it becomes dangerous.
Well, and under OSHA's rule, while it becomes a potential, it's a potential hazard.
I agree with that.
Potential risk. So you have to associate under hazard assessment 1910-132B2 that says this is specifically where a person could cut their hand because 2 years ago we had 2 accidents, or a guard or something like that. So that's where that can go in.
Potentialities. I'm not in a disagreement with that.
Yeah.
Risk here is a choice of action or a choice of inaction. And this is the definition we're not utilizing. Who makes choices?
We did look.
People make choices. So let's say Bob now walks to the edge of this roof. Now what's the hazard for sure? It's a fall. But Bob walked to the edge. Was that a choice that he made? Risk. Yeah. Bob also decided not to wear fall protection. Was that a choice that he made?
No.
Another risk. Bob's employer decided not to train him. Risk of inaction. Another risk. Bob falls and hits the ground. We call that a fall hazard, and falls are the #1 killers of workers. Are you sure it's not all these things? Because I'm going to tell you the background of all that is all these risks that were taking place, little ones, little choices being made by human beings. And we're not talking about that part, but you need to start looking at that part because people make choices. And when they make the wrong choice in amongst the hazards, that's when we see the fatalities and we see those things because we're focusing on the hazard and we're forgetting the risk. We got to think about that with the right definition, not just probability. It can't just be the probability, right? So let's just look at this photograph for a second. What's the risk? What's the choice the worker made? Well, fall's a hazard, but what was the risk?
Well, the risk in the first place right there, the ladder is not even set up
The
properly.
ladder is not set up. Is that a risk?
That's a risk.
Choice somebody made, right? All right. Any other risks there? Standing on the top, another risk. Any other risks?
Injury.
Well, injury would be a consequence, but what is the risk? What choice was made? Or not being made? That would just
They put these things around shoes or
shoes, could be balance. Could be,
But he does, listen, he does have 3 points of contact.
I always
Just
say,
not on the ladder.
my belly was a point of contact.
There you go.
Pretty much control,
It's
right?
not on the ladder.
How about stacking the materials too high?
Yeah.
Those are all risks. Let me give you a couple of examples of risks. I'm driving down the road in my truck. Got the cell phone there. Oh, goes off. So let's go to cottage this weekend. Steaks. What was the hazard? That's a risk. What's the hazard?
Well, so,
Distraction's a risk. What's the hazard?
The hazard is oncoming traffic.
No, oncoming traffic is a risk. What's the hazard? What is the consequence of that? Crashing. Crashing is a hazard. Everything else there was a choice of action. So if I'm driving and I look at my phone, did I not choose to do that? Risk. Just a little one, right? If I put my phone where I can see it while I'm driving, is that not a risk? That's a choice. It's a risk. My choices of action. And all these actions are going on constantly. All these choices are being made by humans all the time. If I'm driving down the road and the guy beside me is on his cell phone and I'm driving looking at him going, oh my God, look at that guy on his cell phone, is he taking a risk? He's risking. How am I? Am I taking a risk by driving beside him? Risk, risk, risk. Boom, collisions. All car accidents are the #1 killer of workers. No, it's not actually. It's all the choices we make in the car at 100K. Right? It's all those human risks, those little risks, those little risks, those little choices.
These are also probability and it's also behavioral.
100%. Probability plays into it. Like, don't get me wrong. There's still a probability.
I'm trying to put it all together in my head also.
Let me see what I can do to help.
Okay.
So you come along this situation, you see this worker in this scenario. Hey, get down, you're in a fault hazard, you start talking about the hazard, how we can control that hazard, and all methodologies of control. I would also entertain that you should ask him a question. Can I ask you a question? Why are you doing it like this? Because you might get a whole new story. Oh, last week the friggin' forklift hit the ladder, ran it over. I told my supervisor we need a new ladder. I didn't get any ladder. And then the next thing I know, I got to get the stuff out the door. Somebody piled the stuff so high. This is the only ladder we got left. And you guys want the stuff out the door now. So this is what I got. This is what I was doing. I'm just trying to do my job. What was the actual risk in that conversation? Who took the risk? Who took it? The supervisor. Why did the supervisor take the risk? No. Where was the disconnect? You're right, but where was the disconnect? The forklift hit the ladder. I told my supervisor I needed a new ladder. Did the new ladder show up? So the employer, or the supervisor, took a risk of inaction by not replacing the ladder. Workers are just trying to do their job, so they're going to continue to get the job done because, hey, production is number one. We got to make the money. So now I got this ladder, and then I got this choice. And they just keep making the choice. So we're compounding the choices and compounding the risk. And then all of a sudden we have the accident. We wonder how it happened. And then we say, well, it's struck by hazard. No, it's this risk. And we're not looking enough into that. So,
Would you have had done previous training with them employees?
maybe.
Maybe.
There's lots of fallacy in training. Just because it's training doesn't mean you're going to do anything I
Yeah,
told
but
you.
in my world, I go over the JSA, job safety hazard, and a job hazard analysis.
Yep.
We actually break them down. Bing, 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 bing. And every time somebody adds another one or something else, we keep adding to the hazards that are associated with that job and job description. So to hopefully prevent and say, hey, I'm not doing this because we don't got a new damn ladder.
Well, here's a risk. Convenience versus consequence.
Well, there is no consequences.
Human beings will choose convenience versus consequence over many times.
Okay.
Hey, the most common thing I've ever heard in my career is this. You tell me if you've heard it. I was just there for a second. Oh, I was just on the roof here for a second. Oh, I was just in the panel here for a second.
Yeah.
That's convenience versus the consequences of being electrocuted. That's convenience versus, hey, it's not going to happen to me. Probably not.
That's why I think culture, safety culture is about those choices.
100%. Yeah. Teaching, training the choices. But here, in that last one, would we have talked to the worker or would you have talked to the supervisor? Right? But if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer. Right? So sometimes better questions give you better answers in a systemic format.
And here, under the record keeping, under 1904, we're required to do both of those.
That's right.
Investigate, accident investigation, and you're required to do a OSHA 300 log.
Yes.
And so put all that together, and then if it details that there's enough, like in the past, this has happened twice in the last 6 months, then we need to reinforce and do retraining.
100%. Right? And that's where our indicators tell us how to improve systems. If you get the right indicators, if you get the right data, right? I mean, data is our indicators are only as good as the reporting they give us. So let's go back to humans, because we don't watch for humans as much. How about somebody's attitude or behavior on a job site? Could that be a risk? I ain't doing safety, this stuff sucks. Is that a risk? I do a lot of supervisor training. I always say, if this is your attitude, fix it. You're the risk. Right? You can't legislate that. Right? Employers shall ensure the workers have good attitudes. Good luck. How about lack of knowledge, lack of training, or bad training? Is that a risk? It's a big risk, right? There's lots of training that takes place out here, and I'm sure you guys have all sat through some of it over the years, right? Is it all good training? No. It's not effective, right? Like, I do a lot of interesting things where I actually take things and I say, okay, I'm going to see if I can find all the fallacies of training. Where are all the fallacies of training? Well, the first one is assuming that after I train you, you're going to do everything I told you to do tomorrow, right? And you're going to remember half the stuff I told you to, right? And that's a fallacy of training. If I just train the workers enough, if I just constantly train the worker will always do the right thing, right up until his paycheck depends on getting the job done, or if somebody else puts the financial pressure on, right? Or her. How about language barrier? Experience, education, new or young workers. What do you think? Any risk going on there? Yeah. In Ontario, we have 180 languages in the province of Ontario. And we also have this thing ingrained in our legislation that says workers have a right to know, as long as they speak English. We're in a multicultural world. You guys are in a multicultural world. We're going to train in safety and English. Is that fair to all workers? Thank God for AI. I'm telling you, like, thank God for AI.
What you hear is well, they're in Canada, US, you should learn to speak English.
Hey, you should learn how to speak English. That's called a risk. Or French.
That's right.
But the court system here in America, and how the tort is set up, it is, you're going to say, so you hired an employee that didn't speak the language, you hired an employee that you didn't train in his language, then you are responsible.
Right.
Under OSHA, under tort, you're at default. Now, there's some of the states though that allow you to sue above and beyond workers' comp, and some states don't.
Remember, the law is absolute. It's actually rigged against you all the time. Right? It's rigged for the governments, it's rigged against the employers, it's rigged against everybody. You failed to ensure that worker understood everything you taught him.
One way around some of that is to pass out a handout in the language of whatever it is that you're training.
The only problem with that, Herb, is you're assuming the worker can read. That's the downside. It's not a provision of instruction. Right? As Bo said the other day, that online stuff is great, but you better train and provide the instruction. So I'll give it to you. I'm still going to read it to you in some sort of format.
There has to be a level of proficiency that's noted.
We don't measure competency though after the training.
Not at all.
We teach it, but then we don't go
Yeah.
measure it. We don't have to put
Well,
that.
you can measure it by constantly doing some little mini tests. 10 questions, 9 questions, 10, 12 things. And over a time, then you can come up with a base of, you know what, this employee, I got this one employee was going 61, 62, kept telling me everything. So I put him on the job. And I said, we're paying you, but we want to go over this, and you want to learn this. And I mean, he really studied all of this for about, how do you think, 30, I gave him 30 days to study 37. Well, he ended up getting a 78, but you would have thought he had graduated from high school.
Yes.
Because he started understanding, he said, I'm really getting in, I'm really comprehending this. Because we allowed him to ask questions on his time.
It's a very, and what Mike said and what you're just saying is that, okay, we train them and then we never go back to check to see if they learn it, right? So how many people do an orientation in their workplaces? You do it when they first show up the first day? Remember your first day at work when you walked in? You couldn't even figure out how you're going to, where do I put my stuff? You get all the safety information, then they stick you in a job you've never done before and never get trained again. Like I always say, if you're going to do orientation, then about 30 days from now, go do it again. Just to see, because they're in a different mindset 30 days. They actually saw something on the job site. That first time we did it was good. Welcome to our company, here's our stuff, right? But where's the reinforcement of that? And so you're going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, with my workplace I work with, I don't get them to do very much induction on the first day.
That's smart, right?
So,
I think you're right on that.
No, we do it as, like I do with agriculture, so we do it when I've got to do a new job or a different job.
That's right.
And so we think through, so, you might not use a piece of equipment for 12 months. And so, do it on the first day, you're not going to know.
Here, let me give you everything today. Good luck.
And I mean, if you think about it, we only take in about 5 things.
That's it.
In a new day induction. So what are you going to do? Trying to remember your boss's name, trying to remember at least 1 or 2 employees' names, trying to remember where the toilet is, you've got to remember that they tell them how to pay you, and then the last thing is you might think, oh, there's some policy stuff, which that they exist, that's about it.
Yeah, I finally got a chance to sit down and have a break. And the safety thing was going.
So let me ask you a question. If I did all my orientation the first day, did I take a risk as an employer? That's a risk. How about lack of supervision, lack of leadership, or lack of accountability? Is that a risk? You know how many people are afraid to do anything about accountability? It's like our policy says pink hard hats and fluffy feathers. We train them to wear pink hard hats and fluffy feathers. If I show up and they don't have a pink hard hat and fluffy feather on, and you do nothing, go burn the policy. It's useless documentation. Without accountability, it means that I don't say fire people. Accountability is to the system, to the methodology, to the understanding of this is our expectation. That's accountability. But we don't do it. And we lack a lot of leadership when it comes to, not us, we're out there, you guys are fighting the good fight, right? But there's supervisors that just will not, hey, I need that guy, he's my best guy. He doesn't wear a hard hat. Yeah, but he's my best guy. Well, that's the guy you need to actually do it with because everybody else is following your best guy.
What about lack of direction?
Lack of direction, risk. Incorrect directions, risk. Bad procedures, risks.
See, the direction is what gets you in trouble, gets you sued, because the supervisor or the foreman says, you are directed to do this, you go do this now, and they go do it, and it's a hazard, they fall, they break their leg, they get sued.
Yeah, and you never train the supervisor to actually understand what he was trying to tell, so the risk, they just multiply over time, right? If we get the hazards are, they're dangerous, they kill people all the time, but we're not looking at this thing in the background, which all these choices that humans are making constantly. Like even in this room, we're making, you haven't noticed, I haven't walked past the table behind here, you know why? A lot of friggin' risk back here, right? They have cables and everything, right? They're not taped down. I'm not going back there.
probably trip over my shoelaces. But the lack of quality, because everybody just, well, they might leave tomorrow. So sure, but they might stay 20 years. Right? It doesn't, the fact they might leave tomorrow doesn't dismiss the accountability. You still need to train them if you're going to put them in that position. And then find out that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
How many people have heard this one in their industry? If I train this guy, he quits and goes somewhere else, so I'm not going to train anyone. Right? Well, it's good. So the whole industry is doing that, and we're all getting other people's employees that have never been trained. We're all taking this risk. We're all making these assumptions that people are showing up with things they know. Well, I get trained at the union. You better be checking this stuff, right? Because these are all the things that are showing up, just all these little risks. And it's amazing when you really start looking and seeing. Now, don't forget about hazards, right? We still need to see the hazard because we need to see it first before that human interacts with that hazard. Because the interaction is where the fatalities occur, right? The hazard can sit there and spin all day with no human, not too worried about it. Add a human being. I don't know, I've done fatalities where people somehow got killed, and you sit there and look at it and go, how did you figure out how to get your body in this position, in this area? Like, how did you do that? I don't even understand how you did that. Like, if you're sitting there looking at it physically, it doesn't make any logical sense. How did that person do that, right? But they still figured that out. But we got to get ahead of it. We need to be the experts at seeing that hazard first. The probability is there. It's true. It's real, right? But I also have to know that somebody can come along and what are those choices they may make around that hazard. Not just, hey, put a guard there, but is it a sufficient guard? Is it going to be enough, right? So we got to think about how people think. So if it spins, it cuts, it rotates, it's dangerous. How many saws have you seen out here with missing guards, right? You too could join the Carpenter Gang. That is the official Carpenter Gang sign. If you're a senior member, there's a secret handshake. There you go. Carpenters, you get 10 fingers, right? So one every few years. If it's operated by somebody, if it goes up, down, left, right, spins, hoists, lifts, or move, is it dangerous? Do you know exactly what the operator's going to do? What's this signal mean in safety? Anyone know what this signal means to an operator? Go up a little, yeah. Anybody else? What's this one mean? I hope one has money there, right? What's this one? It could be sand, it could be gravel. How about now? What's the signal mean?
Something to eat.
It's lunch, right? Yeah, what about now?
You already paid up. You lost money that.
You probably open it.
Yeah.
More lost.
I don't know what this one is, but it comes with the Italian. This is no signal anywhere in any book I've ever looked up. This is no official signal anywhere. And yet all day long you'll see guys going, hey! Some operator on there going, he thinks this means up, right? But you're assuming the operator knows what you think. These two disconnects. That operator and that signal person are not communicating to each other. Or if they do, they have a secret symbol. And then you show up and give the signal, and you don't know what the guy's going to do. So if you can't see that operator, they can't see you. Struck bys. As Mike said earlier, like, we're both fatality investigators. We've grown up in the prosecuting side of the game. You want to see the worst fatalities? You'll see what 50 tons does to a human body. Like, you stand zero chance in these scenarios. The machine always wins. And yet, I've seen this one many times.
On the guards, in my training classes,
Yep.
I tell them, I stress them the actual standard, 29 CFR 1910.
Hammer the standards.
212.
Yes.
Over and over and over. And I've got people that come back 3-4 years later, I still remember that damn 212, put the
Yep.
guard down.
That's it, put it in. That's good, but that's repetitive, standing in there. We'll talk about some of this tomorrow, right? But if it's been altered or modified or had safety features removed or defeated, we've all seen that, right?
Yeah.
Put the duct tape in or put the screw in the electrical panel there. Those are all hazards. Whoever put them in there took a risk, right? If we leave them in there, we're taking a risk. Small power tools, extension cords. I'm preaching to a choir. Have you ever trained a worker how to use a hammer?
Oh, yeah,
Could you prove it?
actually, no.
Why would? Most legislation in North America has a point where it says the employer shall provide information and instruction to protect the worker's safety. You fail to provide them any information or instruction that you can prove to me. Remember, I teach this as a game of boots and suits. When it comes to safety, I find it's just easy to remember boots and suits, especially when you're teaching supervisors. Boots is what they're doing. Put your hard hat on, tie off, where's your safety vest? Suits was the game we played. Can you? Why is that guy not tied up? I told that guy yesterday to tie up. Huh. Can you prove it? No, I win. How would you like to plead?
I wrote it on, I can't do it.
Oh, you can prove
I
it?
get a yes.
Okay.
I give a proof.
Let me see that.
But it happens. Oh, it's covered under the general duty clause.
Oh, I love the general
We
duty
got
clause.
you.
Oh, it allows inspectors to write a law without any kind of oversight by any provincial body. I just make shit up as I go.
Right. We had a coworker who shut down a job for, what was that, mosquito borne?
Oh yeah, West Nile virus. It rained the night before, there was puddles on the ground, shut down the entire construction project. I called him, and I was in training, I'm like, she just shut the whole project down for West Nile virus.
Because it
Get
was
outside.
standing water.
She's like, leave. I'm not there.
She didn't understand that.
That was the general duty clause, and that's the authority it gave her.
Yeah. Yeah. You see a lot of bad.
Yeah, but did you take it for overreaching? Because in the US, if they use the general duty clause and it's overreached, then you can go against that. You can contest it and go against that.
You
No,
can't go
you
against
appeal.
it. Yeah, nobody appeals it.
I'm sorry?
They don't appeal these orders. They can, but they don't.
Yeah.
Right? Because, hey, I don't want to be a target of the authority, right?
It doesn't come with a criminal conviction, though, does it? It's just a.
So later today, I have a phone call with one of my clients. They became my client. I have clients that become my clients at the worst day, which is a fatality. This worker was killed in 90 feet underground, okay? And that's when I met my client that day. I won't say any names here, but I'll give you details. The organization was charged with criminal negligence. Anybody ever done this one?
Oh, yeah.
What's the hazard?
The bar slips off.
Or
Or the ratchet slips off the nut. One of the two, it's one of those two.
I'm probably gonna do this on the weekend. We just can't do this at work, right? Because
No.
this here requires engineering, because you change the loading.
Right.
Right, we have a great little section, providing the engineering for, oh, you don't have it, I win. But you see that, is that a risk? You got any risks like that being done by mechanics? Oh, sure, like, we've all learned leverage in our lifetime. Leverage is great, we do it at home. Can't do it at work, because when you do leverage at work, it fails, and now you're into investigations.
Actually, the whole culprit right there is salt and corrosion.
In that one?
Yep. If it wasn't corroded where you're trying to get it loose, you wouldn't need the other cheater bar. And if you properly put your ratchet or socket on the nut and you held it with your other hand as you applied torque to move it, see, you're good. But the problem is the corrosion has, because I learned that in Germany when salt on Oshkosh, snow machine,
There's a lot of training. on
There's a whole lot of work there, you know, I'm just gonna go over.
I'm certified on
I'm
it.
just going over to the department store, I'm gonna grab that ratchet there I bought, I'm gonna put it on there, you know, get the bar, then I gotta knock my teeth out, is what's gonna happen. All right. Lockout, tagout, test. I'm gonna say it again, lockout, tagout, test. And one more time, lockout, tagout.
Test.
Test. You know why I say test? Because I did an accident where a guy, supervisor, 27 years, walked out a substation in a place called Alma. Walked out the entire substation, took off his art class gear, had a sandwich, went back in, reached into the panel to work on it, and blew up the panel in front of him. Well, he survived, that's the problem. He survived the accident. I remember interviewing this fellow in Concord, and his face was burned, he was blind, and he could see like shape, but that's about all he had left. Hands were all burnt and melted, skin was burnt, ears were burnt, no hair left on him, and his whole chest was burnt. That's what he took in his face. And to this day, I've never forgotten what he said to me. Kevin, I forgot to test. So I say lockout, tagout, test. And which is the most important word out of those three?
Test.
Huh. How many people just call it lockout, tagout?
That's what everybody calls it.
Everybody calls it lockout, tagout, and we're missing the most important aspect. Lockout, tagout, and check for the mechanical or whatever energy you locked out. Is it still live or not live? Because the test was the failure. The test was the thing that we're missing. So I say lockout, tagout, test. I won't even change it.
I mean, we also, on doing the trainings, we make sure it's out, but we also bump it. We also go around and make sure it's been unplugged. That's a requirement for, we go above and beyond for that.
This guy was a hydro system. You know what happened? This particular station, all the stations, they wire them a certain way. This one was wired completely different. And he assumed that the station had the same wiring as all the jobs he'd done before. And the assumption was the thing that killed him. Well, I didn't kill him, sorry, I hurt him. Anyways, anything energy-wise. Materials, so struck by are your number 2 killers out there, struck by equipment or struck by material. We've had 3 drywallers in the province of Ontario just killed by drywall. Doesn't take much for the material to tip, to fall, to go. Witness, we've all done witness. Down here, you guys call it GHS. You're familiar with all that. 97% of companies don't even do that stuff right. And we've all done the awareness, don't drink this, this blows up. But if you actually read the legislation for that, have you ever trained them in the actual product you're using in the SDS sheet for the product? How many people have done it that way? That's good, because that's correct, GHS. That's correct, witness. But you come up into Canada, they all, oh, I got my witness awareness course. That's good. Have you been trained how to use the towing lane? Nope, I wait.
Well, it sounds to me, I'm just, it sounds to
safe
me
again.
there's an inherent problem up there. It's an inherent, it goes, I mean, like,
Chaos is cash, Barry.
okay, well, I get it, but, you know.
It's not, though. It's not that it's inherent.
I'm a facilitator side, and I'm a human, I love human. and
I come
wanna
into the
protect
stage
human.
too, I'll tell you the same story in a
Yeah.
lot of places, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of places that do it well, don't get me wrong. Don't ever get me wrong. 90% of the time, we never have anybody get killed anywhere. Like, if you actually look at safety, a percentage of, we don't have it, we just focus on the failures a lot more.
Yeah.
Right? So the failures become the stories, those failures become the things that kill people. We get those stories, right? But we're not paying attention. Environment, right? How about housekeeping? Let me ask you, is housekeeping a hazard or a risk?
Well, it's a hazard at first.
Yeah.
It becomes a risk when you start going, when you go through the boundaries, when you go through the hallway, when you go to where there's unprotected panel boxes, or so it's kind of a,
Housekeeping is a hazard?
housekeeping can be a hazard because it's debris in the aisleway. Under 1910.22, if there's anything in the walkway, if there's water, if there's oil, grease, if there was a cleanup, mopping,
So I agree with you.
and then it all become hazards.
They're hazards.
Yeah.
Is housekeeping a hazard?
What's that? Housekeeping? Well,
What's housekeeping, what's the definition?
Yes,
So housekeeping-
housekeepers are hazards.
So housekeeping, in the way it's used in the industry is, you know, the facility is in good, clean condition. Or if it's not, it's messy, so the housekeeping is bad. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we do it. So would housekeeping be a risk or a hazard? For instance, back here, these wires. This would be a housekeeping. Is that a risk or a hazard?
Why? Housekeeping changes the
So the choice to leave the wires like that is a risk. The choice not to clean it up, to tell you the truth, is another risk. What is the actual hazard of this fire?
well, one, triple balls.
Slip, trips, falls, yeah,
Two,
fire
two,
hazard.
Fire hazard, electrical.
Right.
There's.
So housekeeping itself as a
Yeah.
conversation is
Yeah.
actually a risk. It's
Yeah.
choices being made by humans. Somebody chose to leave it messy, and then other people walk by it being messy. Those are all choices and risks, yes.
So that choice is housekeeping can be good housekeeping or bad housekeeping.
It's
If you got,
still a choice.
if you got good housekeeping, then no problem. Bad
Now, they
housekeeping,
don't have any hazards. If the housekeeping is good, it's safe access and easy to walk.
There you
right?
go.
So there you go. So that's good.
there you go.
Then housekeeping is good. But a lot of times when we see housekeeping, people call them hazards, it's actually not. The actual
Bad.
hazard is tripping. The actual hazard is obstruction. The actual hazard is fires.
Yeah.
Anybody know what tinnitus is? Anybody have tinnitus? It's all just safety.
Yes. Get on the flight line.
You know how I teach tinnitus? It's great. I go on the sites, I pull up 4K on the YouTube. That sound, you know, that I turn it on and I just start talking over it to you guys. I'm talking about noise protection and hearing. And they're like, when you turn that off, it's really loud. And if you don't wear hearing protection, this is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because that's what's ringing in my ears.
Yeah.
How about yours? Same. Yeah. It's not bad right now, right? But 3 o'clock in the morning, it's so loud you can't even move. The right noise and atmospheric hazards. These are all things that are out there environmentally like. We all talk about process. Learning to see process is probably one of the best things we do. What are we doing now? Okay, we're doing an excavation. So here's the list of hazards in my head. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's the risks that can happen. Oh, we're in a tunnel, and here's the stuff now. I'm in a factory. Here's what I'm looking for. Right? One of the best things you can do for safety is learn to look and just see process, and then start understanding the hazards of it, but not even that, what are the risks that people take around those particular hazards in that particular industry. Right? When I'm teaching new safety people, I'm like, don't try to learn all of safety. Learn this piece and become good at falls. Number one, that's all you ever did was stop people from falling. Congratulations, well done, right? Because that's the thing that kills people right around the plant. I think it's 2,000 some odd workers per day are killed by a fall at the plant level, right? Anyways, this is just called recognize, assess, and control. You guys know this stuff. The hardest thing to do is really recognize things, is actually the hardest thing to do for a lot of supervisors, to admit they actually have to go do something about it and get it done. Right? That's not my problem. Whose problem is it? The guy's not tied off, right? So he's taking a risk. If I walk past him, am I taking a risk? Risk, 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 and the guy falls, and we're all like, oh, fall hazard, number one killer. It's like all those choices that guy made. Assessment, we've all done all kinds of different assessments. Control. Everybody sees these pyramids out here, and they always say elimination, substitution, right? Mine doesn't say that. Here's a hazard here. See this hazard? Don't fall. Mike, don't fall in this hazard. See the hole? Don't want you to fall. I'm going to train everybody here personally not to fall in the hole. Now, what do I trust more? Your training or this hole?
The holes will stay there.
That hole? I trust this hazard? You know he's going to show up at 3 o'clock tomorrow, boss. This hole came in early. And all my workers and all their training. They fall in the hole, they go, right? What's the best way to protect a worker from the hole? Yeah, get rid of the hole, right? No hazard, you'll die.
Engineer here.
Yeah.
PPE is always the last choice.
Right? Well, so eliminate the hole, get rid of the hole.
Well, I don't think engineering would be part of it because it's a hole. So the hole needs to be corrected.
So you either fill the hole in or put a guardrail around the hole. Like isolation is your second choice. Lockout, tag out, test. We're isolating the worker from the energy. If I can't eliminate that choice, then I got to isolate that worker from those hazards. Then engineering, if you've got opportunities, you engineer those controls out. Then substitution. Instead of using ladders, use platforms. Administrative, those things are great. In automotive, they do it a lot, right? Like if you look at some of the big automotive plants, remember, I'm just going to put that part on. Imagine doing this for 12 hours, right? Brains into marshmallows, your arms are wore out. They learned to say, hey, for 2 hours, like Honda's like this, they do 2 hours on this part, take a break, and now they're over here doing the wings, then they're doing the windshields.
Or they switch positions.
They literally exercise the workers. The workers are moving all day long. Their MSDA injuries went, phew. And all they did was change it. By the time the guy gets back over that hole, their mind is interested, because human minds like to wander. Imagine, we can't even get people to stay on TikTok for more than a second now, and you got a guy doing the same job on a punch press
For 8 hours.
for 8 hours, right? Hopefully he stays intense. And then the PPE, this is the last line of defense. It's the worst line of protection.
Worse, yeah.
You know why? I got to rely on people. And what do people take? Shortcuts.
Chances.
Shortcuts and risks. So the more I rely on people, the more I need to supervise. If I have no hazard, I don't even need a person there. But the more I rely on you using fall protection, the more I got to rely on you using PPE, the more I better supervise, because I know humans do what? They take risks, right? They make choices, they take those risks. I bring up the picture. And evaluate. All right, we're going to play a game. I'm going to shut these lights off. And we got a procedure for that? Oh, who knew? This is where signage is good. I give up.
Can I throw one thing in here?
Yeah.
So a lot of things I've read in different jurisdictions. I work in a lot of different jurisdictions, and a lot of jurisdictions say that at the start of the job, workers are supposed to stop and do a hazard assessment. Okay. That, I don't know what it's like in where you live, but what it doesn't break down is that every worker has different levels of knowledge. It's like, so the worker that literally just finished high school yesterday and shows up on a major construction site, is going to go work on top of the scaffold, isn't going to recognize many hazards compared to somebody like you or I who's going to walk. We're going to see a completely different set of hazards, but the whole system goes back to having that person make that hazard assessment at the beginning. It doesn't say anything that they need to know what all the hazards are, it just says they're the ones that are supposed to do the hazard. And that's, I've seen that in a few different jurisdictions, and I've always questioned that actually as far as the effectiveness, because we're relying on somebody knowing what the hazard is to make an assessment on doing the work for the hazard.
And to Mike's point, one of the worst things I think we ever did was not let our kids play outside anymore. How many people fell out of a tree? How many people got hit by a car? How many people fell through ice? Yeah, I've done them all. I've done them all, right?
I saw the hazards, I didn't do none of that.
I mean,
At least I know it's gonna hurt. I think I've done everything I tell people not to do, right? But at the end of the day, we played with a lot of hazards. We played with risk. We played with it. Nowadays, kids fall off buildings, they respawn, and they just come back to life again, right? There's no reality to being hit or hurt or anything. Then they come to your job site where you got, heavy equipment moving around, or you got processes running, and they're like, they don't know. It's not their fault. We just took it right there. Yeah.
Yeah, right about that.
All right, let's play a game. So we're gonna play spot the hazard, which is harm to the person, or spot the risk, the choices that they're making or not making in this scenario. In our first picture, what is our hero's risk? Ball.
Well, he's relying on those side boots to hold him up.
That's what exactly, yeah. What are the risks? What do you see? Fall's a hazard. What's the risk?
No fall protection.
No fall protection, not tied off. What else?
Stepping over the guardrail.
Above the guardrail. Any others?
Leaning outside the platform.
Got all his body weight. That's
Back injury, manufacturer's shoulder injury.
I don't think he's going to. This guy's just watching him. Is he taking a risk?
Yeah,
definitely.
Look at all the risks here. The hazard's easy. It's falling, right? We all get that.
I had one of those where a guy was doing that and he strained his back.
This guy's gonna break his neck because his balance, his neck's twisted. Like he's literally risking his life for a screw. I say this to guys, you are risking your life for a drywall screw. Would you do that? No, but there they are. All right. You wouldn't want to move this, right? You know how long that's going to take to move that genie thing over an extra foot? Oh, you're just going to be here for a second. That's what it's going to take. Let's just there for a second. Risks, risks, risks. Little ones, little ones, little ones, little ones. Start looking for them. All right. What's the hazard?
no fall protection.
No fall protection. Fall's a hazard. How about Darwin here? What risk is Darwin taking? I think that's his name, Darwin. Yeah.
Those are the awards anyway.
Yeah, climbing up that thing. I'm just gonna go up there, right? No operator in the machine. No engineer. Look at all the risks. Can anybody see this guy? I can see his shirt. I can see his jeans, and almost see his knees. What I can't see is a harness. I can't see a guardrail. So sometimes what's not there also tells me what's going on. In Ontario, this is $2 million, $4 million, $6 million, $8 million potential fine. Some people say the Ford's a hazard, but that's up for debate.
Brownville Road dead, yeah. But it's next to shit.
So I'm assuming also that they use the telehandler to lift the guy up there.
Much better.
That's probably, yeah,
That's why they put it on, so that they.
that's where he's going. Yeah,
That'd be another fine as well.
This is the allowed behavior. Guaranteed this is allowed behavior. Lack of leadership is probably the big risk here. Right? If I see that many workers doing that many things, I'm actually going to the who's in charge of this place, right? Like I'm going to who's in charge, or going up to companies, I'm going up to owners, because they're allowing this to happen. The workers just know it's okay to do it. There was nobody in control.
Oh, she caved in. Oh, my
The
goodness.
hazard is caving. What's the risk?
He's got a ladder.
What are the choices they've made here? Yeah. No shoring, no sloping.
No sloping.
Usually ladder's upside down. It doesn't fit in the bottom of the trench, so we turn it upside down. That should be okay.
There's no clear area at the top.
Doesn't have to clear. You know what's dangerous is the machine. It's not what it's doing or where it is. It's the fact that this thing can dig 18 feet deep. It just doesn't dig wide very well. So they're like, well, we're just here for a little bit of time. It's frozen ground. It should be okay. Risk, 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 risk. The hazard's simple. It caves in, you're dead. Like, there's 2 minutes surviving that. It's 8 hours to rescue you. True. Oh, nothing to see here. This is your shop.
Housekeeper.
Housekeeping is a risk or a hazard?
The hazard.
It's a risk. Somebody left it like this. That's the choice. What is the hazard of this, Bert?
Everything.
Everything, yes. Slip, trips, falls, fire, structural collapse, combustibles. Preaching to a crowd. They used to call me Shut 'em Down Brown in Ontario. I'm not sure why, but I think because it rhymes. But these guys, I used to love to see these guys in April, or sorry, in October, around this time of year, because they put these big tarps on these temporary scaffold. What do they put on that scaffold? Sail. 100-foot sail. Do they need engineering for that? Sure do, because they've altered temporary structures, right? And this thing is just a disaster. This is about $12 million potential fines. Voids under the sill plates, $2 million. Not secured, $2 million. Damaged scaffold, $2 million. Tarps, $2 million. No fire extinguishers, $2 million. Housekeeping's another $2 million. Missing goosers are missing.
Why is it
Decking is
$2 million?
missing. There you
Maximum
go.
fund.
Maximum fund.
Maximum.
That's why he's running. What's the risk?
Balance, it's a balance risk.
It is actually this good. Most people don't catch that. Well, hang on.
You step on one side, he's got a good platform, you step on the other side.
If I show you the vertical here, it'll help you. Where's his body weight?
It's kind of overall to the side of the cliff.
He's like this, right? At least he was smart enough not to stand on this piece, right? But then he stood on that little round piece.
That's called a pivot.
Somebody said, well, Kevin, the big problem here is we have no head. Yeah, you're right, no head. Because it's holding up the drywall. What is the hazard?
Crushing.
Crushing, what's the risk?
The main operating terrain is, got the guy right behind you doing something.
Anybody done anybody ever done overhead crane crushing? So the simple solution is get rid of the tether. Right? Thank God for wireless these days. Most companies now are going to wireless, so the operator doesn't have to stand there right beside the load. I hate when they hold the load and walk with it too, right? To stay on that load, right? That thing falls over, it's got you. It's simple.
Unless you were the rigger and the operator.
I still don't trust someone. What's the risk?
The light goes off.
The ladder's not the risk. What's the risk? What's the choice of action that they took? Falling's a hazard. What's the choices that they take? Standing on the top two rungs. That's what the sticker says. Don't stand here, don't stand there. And yet, what would the solution be for this? Just get another ladder. Well, that's going to take an hour.
Termination.
You're punishing the worker.
It's all right ladder. Actually, somebody sent this to me. I thought it was the best way to communicate a ladder policy. It should come with every ladder. It'd be so much easier. If you stand here, suspend it. And if you stand here, terminate it. It can be terminated in two ways, right? No more work or just no more life.
Oh.
We see this stuff all the time. It's inside that low-rise residential. It's that house that's being built that looks really nice, and inside it, there's this guy. I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know what the risk here is? Reproduction is the risk. Like, if that DNA makes it back into our system, it's not good for us as a race. I don't even know how you, like, these aren't even parallel.
No, they got an angle so that they make the right angle.
He's got the wheels blocked. Well, they're not.
That's questionable there.
Oh, it's invited. Yeah, exactly.
Temporary box.
That's a risk.
Not covered.
Not covered, somebody chose not to cover it, any other risks there?
The main box itself is not covered.
Yeah, any other risks?
Temporary box.
Temporary box, any others? How about wiring and grounding on the outside of it?
No covering.
How about plugging into that, was that a risk? Look at all the risks, all the choices that got made, and nobody just chose to fix it. We all just chose to keep going on, and all of a sudden there's a guy dead electrocuted, we're like, oh, electrocution hazards, like the fourth killer of workers. No, it's the 400 risks that were being made there, right? Start thinking ahead, thinking ahead. See if you can see the risk in this one. Mike will get this right away, it's probably hard to laugh. What's the risk?
Sure, because we use nails instead of batteries.
These are cat nails. If you call Cat up and say, hey, send me some nails so I can nail the bucket to my machine, that's what this guy did. He went, they're not cat nails. He just found these big nails, nailed the pins on, nailed the wishbones on, nailed the primary lift beams on. You know what he said to me? I can't afford to fix the machine. Dude, you can't afford to be
Can't
here.
afford not to.
Like, we condemned this machine, and the worst part was we condemned his truck. It was so bad he had to bring a float in to float his own truck off-site because it wasn't allowed to go on the road. And yet here's an employer that my client hired these guys because they were cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
Risk. Right? Money's a risk, right? Cheap means good lawyers. I always tell people, you want the cheapest safety guy, give him a call. Here's a number. What's the number for? That's a lawyer. You're gonna use cheap safety, you need a good lawyer. Well, you're more expensive, right? And you don't, if you use me, you don't need a lawyer. Because we're not gonna have an accident, hopefully. If you have an accident, at least I can help you. Right? But at the end of the day, cheap safety, good lawyers.
What's the cost of those pins to buy the property?
What's that?
What's the cost of the pins?
They're just bolts. Like,
They're not cotter pins.
But they wouldn't be that much more expensive than.
Not that expensive, it just takes time to get them. It's convenience versus consequence.
It's available at Home Depot.
It's a huge hazard we don't talk about, right?
I have seen bolts with nuts and washers and washers.
Oh, yeah, actually, no,
If it fits in the hole, it works.
yeah, whatever fits in the hole is good, right? All right, so we got fire hazards, obstruction, access egress, but somebody chose to do this, right? And we come in and just say, hey, this is an obstruction hazard, but we gotta ask ourselves, how is this choice being made and why is it being made? Probably because we're not literally defining the risk of stuff. This looks okay, but what's the risk? What choice is he making?
Well, he's going to be caught, possibly too.
So he's in the mirror, right? The problem is, he's in the crush point. I call this the oh my F side. Oh my God. You want to be on the what the F side? What the?
Yeah.
Right? But people don't think about that. Crushing accidents are some of the worst accidents I've ever done in my career. I've done too many. How's that? I had one where a 11-ton counterweight fell off and landed on the guy's head. There's an interesting day. Right? It's an interesting conversation. It's all done on video too. I got the whole video for it. You'll never see it. Nor would I ever wish it on.
Oh, good.
That's ventilation.
That's hot rock. Human ingenuity. It was very hot. This guy literally built his own. Like, this is a battery. There's a little fan in there. Drilled all the holes. One of my staff on this and said it's gonna be like, that's genius. Just about done.
There's your first clue. There's the first
Exactly.
clue.
That's right, that.
Here's the second one.
Yeah, baby! Wow. How many people saw that coming? I did. You know who else saw? The guy with the YouTube video. I'm gonna get so many likes. It's amazing how likes became more important than life. Right? But then the guy who's actually doing it, right? He does an assessment. Yeah, it's okay. And then the guy over here is probably his first day on the job. Oh, there goes the boss. 3 grown men. Watch this occur, and nobody's intervened to stop it. Risk.
Four grown men.
Four.
Four grown men.
Where's the four?
The guy on
Somebody.
the ground, the guy helping him, the operator,
And the guy taking the video.
and the guy taking the video.
Well, he is the operator. He was the operator. He was running it from inside that.
He was doing it from the.
It's like a trebuchet, those things. Like you don't tie. That's not fall protection. You tie down so you don't get ejected into the machine. You get launched out of that thing. All right, you're having a great day. Things are going good. You got the air conditioning working in the Silverado, and this happened, and you're in charge. What's the hazard now? And we're gonna wrap this up. So.
Electrical, got the power line down.
Good.
That's biggie there.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's energizing everything. Anything else going on?
Yeah, you see some ropes to get out.
Yeah. Is the operator still in there?
Yeah.
He's on Indeed looking for a job, but he's okay. He's screaming. That's the first day. What's going on here?
Yeah, you got scaffolding.
I got all the scaffold. Like you're in charge. If you were in charge of this, you got to think fast, right? What's the hazard now? Because everything just changed. You went from normal operations to completely different operations.
Once those damaged hydraulic lines start dissipating energy, the rest of the crane's gonna fall over.
Yeah. I don't think it's supposed to be parked like that. But this guy's standing right there, right? He's like, wow, that should be okay. You're in charge of the scene, get control of that scene, and then you're gonna get pedestrians and traffic and onlookers and YouTubers and everybody. Oh my God! I always tell the stories of right? Has anybody ever had to do any kind of safety information around bison? So it's just in Canada, working in Alberta, and I'm giggling my butt off because I have a picture of me that says Cobalt safety. standing in front of a buffalo herd, was just taken by my brother. But now I know, not to show that picture to anyone. All right, so is this a different way of looking at it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good president.
Thank you.
And it was dark. And that's